Hello, everyone. I better do my intro all over again. Gosh, that's a train wreck. And I can see that I'm very slow. What should I do about that? Well, I'll start all over again, shall I? I do apologize. Very unprofessional. Thank you, Arthur, for letting me know that there's no sound. Hello and welcome to the Last Days live stream, the show that brings welcome levity to the end of the world, lifting the spirits of many of you battling boredom, loneliness, or anxiety. He's now saying no StreamYard link. By infecting as many as possible with comfort and distraction as the apocalypse unfolds. Yes, thanks to Arthur for letting me know that my mic wasn't working. It wasn't letting me know that at this end. And I realized looking at the link, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But for me, it's a very jittery image. Gosh. So psychologist Rachel says, how's your eye? I just explained the whole thing, but unfortunately no one could hear me, so I better go through it all over again. Oreo says, yes, it's jittery. I do apologize. Hopefully the stream will settle down a bit once it gets into its flow. It seems to be fairly stable now. David Johnston says, hello from Nevada. Hello, David. What's it like now? Before I proceed, before I launch into my eye saga again, I'm going to have to edit this, do the horrible change the whole thing in post. Annika P says, slightly glitchy. Can we get any improvement on that? Is it just slightly glitchy? Gosh, 190 of you watching as well. Duck with that says, you're good to go. Ronnie says, less jittery now. I do apologize, everyone. Here on the Last Days live stream, we try to be consummate professionals in all areas, as you know, not just with comedy and banter and poetry, but also on the technical side of things. It's just all gone to pots today, quite frankly. I think I'll blame it on my eye. I was just launching into the whole saga. But actually, before Arthur has an aneurysm, let me just send the participation link to him and others so that they can wait in the green room ready to be added. Live stream link. Yeah, I must apologize, viewers. I've kind of launched into this in a very cack-handed way, very nonchalant, a very overconfident way. I must apologize. Okay, so eye trouble. There was no episode. There was no Last Days live stream on Wednesday, as many of you will know. What happened was, a day or so before, I injured my eye making some repairs to our balcony. Our balcony roof had nails protruding through that have been there for years and years. And because we're hoping to spend more time in the balcony, especially if we head into a second lockdown, which it's actually looking like at the moment because there's been a huge spike in cases here in Croatia, we figure let's do it up a bit and let's make it a safe place. So I was all gung-ho and grabbed my angle grinder and just went at it with these nails, not thinking, well, you really need safety glasses. I didn't take that obvious precaution. Gosh, thanks for these super chats, by the way. Thank you to Lee Spanner. And thank you also to Bondi Media. It is good to be back on YouTube. Thank you so much for that. So I went at these nails with this angle grinder, and unbeknownst to me, some sparks went in my eye, and I didn't realize this until the day after. I woke up with my eye feeling uncomfortable, and about halfway through the day, to begin with, I just thought, oh, my eyelid must have just become unsettled through the night. It'll sort itself out. By the middle of the day, I got Deanna to have a look at it, and she found that there were indeed small fragments of metal in my eye. So I had to go to the ER. They removed one of the fragments, but gave me an appointment to go to an optical doctor the following day. And yeah, they found another piece which they removed, and apparently it's now clear of metal, my eye. But I did actually come home. It was touch and go, by the way, because I'd actually timed the live stream slightly later, hoping that I would be able to come home from the hospital and jump on and do the show. But what I wasn't expecting was for them to actually put an eye patch on my eye so that I could only see through my left eye, and my left eye is quite blurry. So that means basically I spent the whole day basically not being able to read, which was a very bizarre and slightly disturbing experience. But in any case, in the intervening period, I've managed to do a bit of work. I've recorded and edited a video about the HLC arrangement called Angels of Death. That will be uploaded tomorrow. And you'll actually notice when you watch that video that one eye is quite shiny, and that's because it's brimming with ointments and eye drops and creams and all sorts. Basically, every hour or so, or a couple of hours, I get ambushed by Deanna with with these eye drops. Bless her, she's really fastidious about making sure I get my eye medication so that I'm back up and running. I still feel bad about that intro. If you're watching this after the fact and you wonder why there is no amazing apocalyptic intro, it's because I've probably hacked it off because it's so unprofessional. I really do apologize, everyone. Yeah, what can I say? What can I do? I guess what I can do is read some of the many, many comments that are flooding in from the 246 of you that are now watching. Let's just see if I can find. Yeah, mind control really sucks, says. At least we can hear you now. All that matters. That's very kind. Denise Bartlett says, I was expecting an eye patch. Sorry to disturb you. Sorry to disappoint you there, Denise. Gabrielle Spedding says, I love your beard. The beard's coming off actually pretty much after this live stream because it's just getting to that point where it's an irritation. So with my facial hair, it goes in waves. So I'll grow it out, and then it gets to a certain point where I'm starting to feel like Abraham or something. What really gets me, ladies, you probably won't know this, but what really gets me is when the hairs start to grow into your mouth. That is a really unpleasant. I suppose I could just trim around my mouth, but that's just delaying the inevitable. It's just not a nice experience having hair protruding into your orifice. So I just go at it with clippers every now and then, and that's why every now and then you'll see I'm on the channel and I'm beardless, and then I just let it grow again, and the whole thing resumes. Debbie Aquino, veteran of live streams past, says visual is much better. That's very, very good to hear. Oreo says, I blame the tight pants. I have to say, what I'm wearing is currently more resembles pajama bottoms. Not that tight. If I'm happy to take the criticism here. It was my fault. Let's just see here. Art Starling is hailing from Northern Canada. I really am terrified of mispronouncing some names here. Hege Langurgen says hello from Norway. Jan Byrne 007 says finally made it onto another live stream after about 5 or 6 weeks of being away. Well, welcome. Good to have you here. Stacey Blaine says, hey, I'm disfellowshipped and I've had JW friends get in touch with me. I feel so sorry for them because they are so scared. It's awful. Scaremongering. Yeah, well, that's one of the problems, one of the many problems with the whole culture of Jehovah's Witnesses is that everyone considers everyone else's spirituality to be their business. So you get an awful lot of guilt tripping and people interfering in other people's lives. It really is very unpleasant. But, you know, the thing to remember, of course, is that you're not alone. Lots of people going through this same situation. Let's just see here. Eric Larson says, we're still waiting to get out of the first spike in the US. Eric, I'm really quite alarmed, to be honest, by what's happening here in Croatia, because we went for over a week with it bouncing around on 0 cases to maybe 1 case, 1 new case in a day. And then what's happened is in the last 2 or 3 days, it's shot up to 11, then 12, and I think it's around 16 today. And how can I be diplomatic? I don't think it's necessarily that a problem with the way Croatia is dealing with the coronavirus. I think it's actually being imported. So Croatia is opening its borders somewhat, especially mindful of how dependent it is on tourism. Croatia needs tourism in order to get by. And one of the borders that's opened up is the border with Bosnia. And in Bosnia, their approach to coronavirus has been to take the Swedish approach, which is to bury their heads in the sand and just hope the whole thing goes away. And as a result, they have a big problem in Bosnia with the coronavirus, and they're now very kindly and generously importing that to us. So I think they are starting now to realize, maybe we need to do something at the borders a little bit more hands-on than previously. But it is alarming to think that so soon after coming out of lockdown, we're very likely going to be heading into it again. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Art Starling says, work safe, Lloyd. Yes, please do. If there's any message to take away from today's last day's live stream, it is to wear safety goggles or the appropriate PPE when undertaking hazardous work. Duck with that says risk assessment wasn't done yet. That, you see, now you're doing Arthur's job. Arthur is actually the only one in the green room at the moment. Let me just turn the AC on. It's really hot in here. I'm getting all sweaty, viewers. It's most unpleasant. You don't want to see me sweat. You really don't. That's not what 272 people want to see on a Saturday. By the way, Arthur, you're watching along in the green room, and you're the only one in the green room at the moment because it's a quiet day. Kimmy and Mark have visitors, and so what we'll do, if you don't mind, is I'll just take a few more comments. I'll spend a bit more time on comments than usual. Then I'll read my book, and then I'll bring you on, and we'll have a sing-along with Arthur. I think that's what the world needs, at least at some point today. Oh dear. So mind control. Maybe this is just an old comment. I can't listen, makes me nauseous. I hope the audio is not failing me again. Let's just see here. So Ishara Nocturnalis says, agreed, protective goggles are important when using tools. Well, it depends what tool, in fairness, but yes, definitely wear the appropriate PPE. Mark Shipley says, the only thing we are living in the last days of is common sense being common. Critical thinking is in critical condition and on life support. Some interesting analogies being invoked there, Mark. But yes, there probably could do with being a bit more common sense in circulation. Job Dela Cruz says, geez, it took me some time to get out of the flock, and now I'm genuinely happy and contented. Yeah, just speaking to what we were saying earlier about disfellowshipping and shunning and all that nastiness, it is very raw when you're in the middle of it. You know, when you are dealing for the first time with outing yourself to your family and your friends, that's a horror. I still shudder when I think back to those early days. And at the time, Diana was pregnant. There was a huge rift with her parents. we moved upstairs because we had been sharing the same part of the building with them. We moved into a part of the building that was unfinished just to get a bit of space because it was so unpleasant. Oh, it makes me cringe. And so it's easy to say, oh, just leave. Everything's going to be fine. To begin with, it isn't fine. To begin with, depending on how deep into it you are, it can be extremely traumatic. Yeah, traumatic. But with time, I think everyone just gets used to it. Everyone gets used to the new normal, including those who were making your life miserable to begin with. Even though they may continue to shun you, at least it's not as raw and it's not as unsettling for them either as time progresses. Time is a healer, I guess, is what I'm saying. JP, more jokes about my eye. I feel so set upon. I feel like I feel like you're all mocking me at this point. Amanda Blackett says deprogramming is very difficult. I definitely agree with you there. I think I've leapt forward, in fact, in the comments. JTL Graziano. I don't know whether I've pronounced that name properly, but I just like saying Graziano. It makes me feel as though I can speak Italian. My physically in, mentally in local design committee, I think, Pioneer Mom started talking to me again. It's weird and welcomed at the same time. I feel like I should be thankful, and I am, but I feel a major need to be cautious. I think you're right to be cautious. I think that, well, it's great that your mother is communicating with you again, but how can I put this? You almost need to protect yourself emotionally, don't you, for the almost inevitable point at which the shunning resumes because she watches something on JW Broadcasting that reminds her that she ought to be shunning you. Or you say something that she doesn't like and she thinks, oh no, my daughter's bad association. So isn't it a shame, though, that's the extent to which relationships are affected, that you have to be on the defensive like that? But yes, I do agree there is a need there to be cautious. Robbie Jones says, motherless children sees a hard time in this world. They are driven out in the cold and nowhere to go. A song that organization should listen to. I didn't know. It sounded so... What you were saying, Roby, sounded so profound, and now it seems that you're just quoting lyrics. Let's just see here. Right, so Ms. Tulip Lady says, yes, the audio and picture are grainy and not lining up, but it doesn't take away from the message. Well, I suppose as long as I'm understood. Let's just see here. A guy yelled at me. Oh, gosh, says Bernabas. Can we just, for a moment, marvel at Bernabas's avatar? I want to know the story there. So presumably this is a Goldilocks depiction or part of the Goldilocks story. I just don't know why the bears are fighting, or are they dancing? What's the story? But Bernabas Collins says, a guy yelled at me for wearing a mask the other day. I was walking down the street. It is scary. Oh, I mean, why do that? Why just randomly yell at someone that you don't know because they're taking precautions to stop people from being infected with a deadly pandemic? Maybe the mask won't make a difference. Maybe you don't have COVID. Maybe no one you encounter that day wearing the mask will have COVID, but you're still showing that you're a considerate person. For me, it sounds more like insecurity on the other person's part. They resent the fact that they're being shown up for not wearing a mask. So they yell. Irritating, isn't it? Mind control really sucks, says the redress scheme controversy hopefully will wake up more JWs to what kind of org they're following. Yes, so probably worth mentioning on the channel that, well, I guess I've been talking about it one way or another for a while now, as indeed have the rest of the Watch, Try and Focus and JWsurvey team. Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia are supposed to be involved in a redress scheme for victims. They resolutely refuse to get involved. And it's been suggested in some recent media reports that one of the excuses that they're giving is that they're skint, that they simply don't have the money, when the way we all know it works is that money gets received by the local branch and then it just gets forwarded straight on to America. So it's very disingenuous if that's the excuse that they're using. We're kind of keeping an eye on that, but it's very, very concerning the way they're basically throwing victims under the bus and not accepting responsibility. I mean, who really expected them to be honest? But even so, it's infuriating, isn't it? What we'll do now is, oh gosh, there's a long comment. So Steve Thu says, I was happy to connect my sister with Sherry and the Recovering from Religion group. It has been years down the track since my sister was disfellowshipped, yet she still is dealing with the issues of shunning. So happy there is somewhere for people to turn to. I wasn't so lucky when I was in my 20s. I had to do it alone. Very sad to hear that. But well done for reaching out to Sherry and Recovering from Religion Foundation. Can't recommend them highly enough. They are equipped to help people through exactly those situations. Now it's time to read. I'll take the comment down this time. Usually what happens is I leave the comments up all the while through. I really need a producer, to be honest. I really hope one day I can just have a producer who does all this for me. Even with StreamYard making everything so easy, I still find it arduous, viewers. And by the way, I'm using the Yeti instead of the Shure SM7B because for some bizarre reason, the audio box has stopped working on StreamYard. Don't ask me why. So we'll recall into service the trusty Yeti. And we're reading from chapter 9 in Take Back Your Life, Recovering from Cults and Abusive Relationships. This chapter is dealing with the topic coping with emotions. We have been discussing the various senses of loss, of grief and mourning that you experience or one experiences when leaving a cult. We're now going to deal with the heading, The Spectre of Boredom. More than one ex-member commenting about life in a cult has said, at least it wasn't boring. Indeed, the highs and lows of cult life produce memories that often are savored surreptitiously by former members. As cruel as a leader may have been, or as challenging as the tasks were, they often provided excitement, pleasure, or a sense of accomplishment. The emotional contortions, mystical journeys, and exotic pilgrimages may have spawned some unforgettable experiences. Hardships and challenges catapult life out of the ordinary. As such, leaving a cult and coming into the mundane world, most notably with the emotional baggage of the cult experience, may produce a sense of letdown, boredom, or that's a word I don't know. Ennui, E-N-N-U-I. I'll now get inundated with comments saying, how do you not know what ennui means? Dissatisfaction, hopelessness, helplessness, fatigue, and lethargy, vague longings, and a pinch of anger are the ingredients of boredom and ennui. The antidote is to acknowledge the things in daily life that now give you pleasure. For example, being able to sleep late occasionally, choosing your own foods, choosing your own friends, or not having to take orders. As you recover from your sense of loss, new discoveries, new pleasures, new friends, new experiences, and new realizations will add meaning to your life. When you can begin to enjoy the small wonders of living daily in freedom, you will become able to look forward to larger pleasures. Awakening your sense of curiosity and your ability to fantasize and dream about the future requires exercising the imaginative muscles of your mind, which most likely were put to sleep by your cult. Most cults deride fun as frivolous and self-indulgent, or they turn it into work, learning, or spiritual or political growth. Either way, to have fun or enjoy yourself probably lost its meaning. The best remedy for boredom is education, whether it is returning to school or exercising your mind through reading, lectures, or challenging experiences. Awakening your ability to think and create encourages and enhances your self-confidence and self-esteem. Start slowly, perhaps with a wish list of all the things you would like to do, have, or be. Then make another list of things that seem possible to achieve or obtain in the coming year, month, or week. Choose one item at a time that you can reasonably attain. Boredom ends with the realization that life, your life, has value. That is a wonderful discovery to make. I think we'll leave it there for this particular reading. Boredom in a JW context, I guess there's a lot of it. I guess, and don't get me wrong, there are pleasant memories, mostly involving doing things outside of JW worship. But there is a lot of boredom, but I guess this is talking about the boredom that you have after leaving the cult and ways that you can get rid of it. Find yourself something to do or think about. Any comments? Thanks so much as well to Cass Graph X for the very kind super chat, and to Lip Locked No More, who is one of my patrons. Very, very kind of you to support the channel. Some nice comments coming through here. I'm just trying to catch up on. Yeah, so Chehorse03 says, it's my whole family against me right now. It's rough and lonely. We can all appreciate how that feels. Capricorn Moon says, Chehorse, you're not lonely with us. I think that's the point, isn't it? We're able to find solidarity among ourselves, aren't we? But even so, sometimes it's easier said than done. But there's Eric again. You're amongst friends here, Chehorse. Definitely echo those sentiments. And having kept him at bay for over half an hour at this point, it's time to unleash on to internet, Mr. Arthur Webber.
Hi, Lloyd. Yeah, as my first comment, it's the first time I've heard this word ennui. So I also had to look it up.
I knew you'd be on my case about that.
I had to look it up in Webster's.
You're saying that you had to look it up?
Yes.
I thought you were going to say, how did you not know that word, Lloyd?
No. I admit when I don't know something, because, I'm not all-knowing either. I'm not Jehovah God. So I'm not even part of the faithful and discreet slave.
Revelations in today's last day's live stream. Don't hit us with all this at once, Arthur. We like to figure this out ourselves at our own pace. So what does this word mean?
As I said in the chat on YouTube, it's boredom. It's a feeling of weariness and dissatisfaction. That's what Webster says about this.
Fair enough. Just say that then. Don't use it. No, I can't complain. I love it, actually, when people use words that no one uses just so that we learn about them and we increase our vocabulary. That's one of the very useful functions of reading, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what we are also. We are. Yeah, I can't find the word.
You see, there's always one. Abigail Parker. I have known Anui since childhood. It's called
Anui.
reading.
It's Anui.
Haha, Abigail is mocking us at this point.
It's Anui.
Is there not supposed to be two ends?
It's two ends, yeah.
I really hope I can get Abigail on this. Abigail, you clearly don't know the word that well because you've misspelled it. Ha! Got you. Right back at you there, Abigail. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So, speaking of nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, running and hiding is something lots of people often find themselves suddenly wanting to do during our next segment.
A sing-along. Hello, friends, and a warm welcome to a fresh installment of Sing Along with Arthur. Before we actually delve into the musical part of our segment, I would like to share a short story with you. Back in 2008-ish, I was an exemplary, dedicated, interested person who was regularly attending meetings at the Kingdom Hall. I really enjoyed my sacred service to Jehovah. I used to give meaningful comments, support the brothers and sisters as much as I could. It was a rewarding and spiritually upbuilding period of time. One day, a new publisher moved into our congregation, Bonafide Graziella Popescu, whom everybody affectionately called Bonnie. Bonnie was about to turn 22 at that time. She had been pioneering for several years and was head over heels in love with the truth, or at least what she expected to be the truth. I approached her after she had a demonstration on the Theocratic Ministry School and asked her out for a tea after the Watchtower study we later had that week. She accepted, and we had a great time together. We decided to see each other more often, and our friendship soon turned into a God-blessed romance, filled with everything there needed to be, regardless of what the elders had approved of, actually. We didn't care because we genuinely felt Jehovah's Spirit upon us, and we prayed even when there was asalgeia or porneia involved. Fast forward a few months, I felt the sky dropping over me when our group overseer announced that Sister Popescu was no longer a sister. She had disassociated after pleading guilty on charges of apostasy. Later, I came across her in atheist groups and cult awareness movements doing activism against Watchtower. And the heartbreaking shock I had back then prompted me to write the following lyrics. Let me bring up the instrumental track real quick. Meanwhile, Lloyd, you can do a short comment.
I'm just letting the viewers take over at this point. Lots of people still talking about ennui, which is apparently how you pronounce it. Yeah, Eric feels that you were giving a talk a little bit. He was starting to take notes.
All right. There she goes. And let's do a screen share.
Seamless as always.
And an audio share. Let's see. Yeah, we do have. My Bonnie left the organization. My Bonnie had lost her faith too. Jehovah, please work with your spirit, so Bonnie would come back to you. My Bonnie's a vicious apostate. Reproach does she bring on your name. My Bonnie's hooked up with John Cedars. She's losing her hope, what a shame. Jehovah, Jehovah, I trust you will change Bonnie's heart. Oh Lord, Jehovah, Jehovah, your wonders are state of the art. Rocket! Heavenly Father Jehovah, we pray to you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, to offer our supplication so that you might examine the hearts and kidneys of any who might apostatize against you, your spirit-directed organization, and the faithful and discreet slave who is actively taking the lead in setting up your theocratic arrangements. Oh Jehovah. My Bonnie left the organization. My Bonnie has lost her faith too. Jehovah, please work with your spirit, so Bonnie would come back to you. Jehovah, Jehovah, I trust you will change Bonnie's heart. Oh Lord, Jehovah, Jehovah, your wonders are state of the art. Amen. Thank you.
That was unmistakably. This looks. That was unmistakably a song, Arthur, and I did detect vocals and lyrics, and yeah, there was singing. So lots of reaction coming in. I've been trying to display some of the comments so far. It was very spirited. I must give you that, Arthur. And how long did you spend working on it?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's how much preparation you give to a live stream that goes out to literally hundreds of people.
Well, I only needed 15 minutes to come up with this. I didn't prepare it 15 minutes prior to.
Gabrielle makes an interesting observation. We need air guitar. Where was the air guitar there, Arthur? You didn't even give us any air instruments this time.
No, because during the guitar solo, I said this heartfelt prayer to Jehovah, because I felt there was a need for some spirituality inside this performance. It's okay.
So, lots of nice comments coming in. John Christensen says, "Go, Arthur. Good laugh over my coffee." Melanie would like you to take her to a church. So, fair enough. Lots of varied reactions here. Annika P says, "Is it just me, but does Arthur pull some Stephen Lett faces?" I didn't know it was possible to pull Stephen Lett faces in the way he does.
Stephen Lett face when I'm singing, of course. It's Jehovah's blessing that makes us. It gives us the spirit needed to do a fine performance.
Well, it certainly was an appreciated performance because it's motivated Rianne to send in a super chat. So I guess I owe you a drink at some point. Next time you come to Croatia. Gosh. So I was just saying before about how there's a spike here in Croatia. Has there been any spike in Romania?
Well, there has been over 300 new cases for the past couple of days.
Oh, really? So it's
Yeah,
happening where
it's
you are
happening.
as well?
Yeah, but not here in Oradea. Oradea is really safe.
Well, for now.
For now, at least, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd be interested to know from viewers as well, what's the situation. I saw something the other day about Oklahoma having a very worrying spike as well. I don't know what the situation is in various states. But it's interesting how we've literally just renamed the show from the coronavirus lockdown live stream to the last day's live stream, in part due to the fact that coronavirus seemed to be more or less under control. And now all of a sudden, I don't know, at least from my perspective, it seems to be flaring up again. Constance Vigilante says, sorry, Constance Vigilance, not I'm not accusing you of being a vigilante, Constance, please. 3,800 new cases in California yesterday. Gosh, that is a lot. Rianne actually has recovered from COVID, I hope, and says that she's feeling better. Just getting my head around the fact I survived a potentially deadly virus.
Yeah, I was also talking to her on Facebook the other day, and I really felt better that knowing that she got past her worries about her COVID-19 infection.
Kristen Halloran says Sacramento, California, US is spiking. Joelle Brown says it looks like we are returning to another lockdown in Australia. Disturbing, isn't it? Yeah, I must say, I mean, it seems very trivial compared to the potential loss of life, but I am glad that me and my family managed to at least escape for one short holiday before. Ramona Moon says lots of new cases in Texas, 3,000 new cases, Florida one day.
Our president Johannes was talking the other day on national television and saying that we have to be very, very careful and not to let us go back into lockdown and destroy what we've been working on the past 2 months.
Darth Vader says, light-hearted scripture for Deanna to recite to Lloyd. Allow me to remove the straw from your eye. We all hope your eye fully recovers. The XJW world needs you. Thank you so much, Darth. She didn't actually remove it from my eye, but what she has been doing is literally ambushing me with eye ointment and eye drops. So I'll just be sat there on the sofa on my laptop, and she'll just come at me from nowhere, brandishing eye drops, and say, "Lean back." So yeah, but I do appreciate actually, because it's nice to be looked after like that, isn't it? And at the moment, if I look purely through the eye in question, my vision's pretty good. So.
And I really want to thank everyone who's been sending these very spiritual and triggering messages, because what we need here on the John Cedars channel is scriptures that apply to our current situation.
Arthur, you seem to be straying from your mandate from being a panelist into being a host. I do not endorse this request, viewers. I do not want you to bombard me with scriptures. That's just Arthur. Gosh. Timothy John says Quebec seems to have flattened the curve, but our numbers are still higher than your Croatian spike. Yeah, it must be said that Croatia is a small country, so yeah, bear that in mind. But for considering again that the numbers were like 0 or 1 at one point, I think they were on the verge of completely or drastically relaxing the restrictions, but then we had this new spike. Ishara mentioning that rallies and I think this is the thing, isn't it, with the BLM protests? And I know that's kind of one of those where people have been saying, how can you support the Black Lives Matter protests, when a lot of these protesters are going out in the midst of a pandemic. I think that it's possible to be sincere about that, but I also think it's possible to point to that. It's called whataboutism, where you're trying to undermine the credibility of the argument by finding an area in which there is some form of hypocrisy. So I think it's a justifiable concern. It's a concern I would have if I were living in America and wanted to participate in the protests. But that doesn't in any way diminish from the importance of the Black Lives Matter issue. Mm-hmm. And I can understand why some would feel so passionate and so desperate, quite frankly, given the way things are in America, that they would run the gauntlet, or they would feel as though they have no other choice. So it's one of those where there is no kind of easy answer per se. Martin L wants to know why I use two names. Can you answer that, Arthur?
Yes. So when Lloyd first started doing activism, he created his account on JWSwitness.net as Cedars, because he was talking about a discrepancy regarding the Cedar Point, Ohio convention, that in the Faith in Action video, they took away the United States flags in the recreation of the convention. And he was putting this question on the forum: why did they remove the flags in the reenactment of the convention, but they kept it in the photos of the convention that were even reproduced in the God's Kingdom Rules book,
Proclaimer's book,
and the God's Kingdom Rules book too?
Well, they didn't have the God's Kingdom Rules book back then.
Back then, no. Yeah. But anyway, they put them back in when they published the God's Kingdom Rules book. And yeah, that's how it started. And that's
so it was a pseudonym, basically.
Yeah.
It was. I wasn't in a position to divulge my real name when I first started doing activism, so I chose a name, and that name was John Cedars. And then I was in this interesting situation where I decided to out myself with my real name and publish a book with my real name. So then I'm left with two names. For the most part, I used Lloyd Evans, but for now, I've kept the name John Cedars as the name of the channel, as like a homage to the journey that I've been on. Interestingly, I did run a poll recently on Twitter, I think, as to whether I should ditch the name John Cedars and call it Lloyd Evans. And I think it was a really narrow result. It was something like 48% for Lloyd Evans and 52% for John Cedars. So I'm not in any rush to do it. I'm just saying it's kind of floating in my head, you know.
Personally, I think John Cedars is actually a brand of Lloyd Evans.
A brand. Maybe I should have John Cedars aftershave, that kind of thing.
And yeah, the John Cedars also spawned other trees in the JW movement.
So Mark called himself John Redwood.
Yeah,
but he's now basically goes by Mark O'Donnell. I think Javier wrote some articles on JWsurvey calling himself James Sequoia or something.
Oh,
there's been one or two more as well. I think there's a maple in circulation at the moment. So there's a few spin-offs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also used Jack Pinewood in some comments on Facebook.
Right. Gabrielle says, Lloyd, where are our other friends like Sasha, Kimmy, and Mark? They have the link. They're just not here. I think with Sasha is obviously in Australia, and it's problematic, I think, with the time zones for him to be on this particular show. Kimmy and Mark, I believe, have guests today, which is why it's just myself and Arthur. It's just as well because I'm actually planning on doing a quiz. I want to do a quiz on future Last Days live streams, and I was planning on having one for today, but it didn't work out, so it's just as well. because it wouldn't have been much of a quiz, just me and Arthur. So you're stuck with us for now, I'm afraid, but we won't be on for too much longer. John Byrne 007 says total number of deaths in my country since COVID-19 started is 102. That must be a very small country. I don't know which country it is. Please do tell. Kristen Halloran says we were getting ready to escape for a vacation, but I don't think we made it in time before the cases went back up, alas. Yeah, Deanna and I were really, itching, I think, to get away to the coast, and we jumped at the first opportunity, and I'm glad that we did. Clarity 2 says, yeah, Lloyd, almost under control in British Columbia, but seems to be going after the elderly still. You see, this is the thing, Arthur. There's a little bit of resentment. I mean, we heard earlier about the masks, someone yelling at someone across the street because they were wearing a mask. There's resentment at having to take these precautions, and what you hear people say is, oh, I don't mind getting it, because the chances of dying from it are so small, I'll take that risk. I'd rather take the risk of getting it than going through the inconvenience of wearing the mask. But that's an entirely selfish way of thinking, because it doesn't matter whether you get it or not. It's the fact that once you've got it, you can then pass it on to others who could die. Who could die because you've not taken precautions. It's all interlinked. We're all part of this web, and we all need
even if you don't have the symptoms.
Exactly.
You can pass it on.
You can be asymptomatic vector of the disease. That's how it works. So I think people who say that just either haven't thought it through enough, or they don't perhaps fully understand how this disease has spread so quickly.
And 102 deaths are in Australia.
Yeah, there's lots of figures coming through. 3,200 cases in Arizona one day total. So John Byrne 007, I went to the shops today and there was not a lot of social distancing happening since the COVID-19 restrictions have recently been eased somewhat. It's sort of the same here in Croatia, but again, I'm just thinking that they're surely going to clamp down again soon and have the restrictions in place.
But Lloyd, do you remember what scripture from Proverbs Tony Moore?
Unfortunately, we've lost Arthur's audio just as he was in the process of launching into some extremely triggering rhetoric, viewers.
Yeah, I was talking about Tony Morris's comments yesterday in the update number 4, and stating that the organization has been more cautious, even if the government's the superior
it's probably worth. Actually, thank you for mentioning that. And actually, here is. I'm going to come back to that, Arthur, but let's first welcome onto the Last Days live stream.
Oh, we have Kimmy.
Kimmy O'Donnell.
Try to make a quick appearance.
So, Kim, you told me you had guests. I was just telling the viewers about your social arrangements.
Yeah, we have somebody coming over doing some. I don't know how much we can talk about. A little bit of stuff we've been working on for a documentary. Some a little bit of stuff working on that, and then taking care of my dad. So it's been a long day.
Sounds fascinating. And you don't have a cat to dangle this time?
I actually have a cat in the room sleeping. You want me to grab him?
Could you just dangle it quickly? Because as viewers will be aware, I do have problems with demonetization of my videos. And one thing that helps is if YouTube can be tricked into thinking that this video is about cats.
This is JR.
Oh, JR the cat.
So he's the one that was screaming last week in Mark's microphone. He's
yes, that's a very distinctive call that we heard in a recent live stream. So
he's a little volatile.
He certainly seems to be feisty.
He actually was a cat that we rescued. He followed us home on one of our walks. Unfortunately, he was kind of thrown outside by his previous owners and not cared for. So he came home with us, and we've been feeding him and adopted him. So, but he still got a little bit of anger issues from all the abuse. So,
right.
But he loves us. He does his own thing. Right?
Okay.
On his terms.
Well, again, if there's any kind of YouTube reviewer watching the video, you will see clear evidence that this is a video about cats and not about important adult topics. Our cat is actually. So we have Olivia, who made her debut on a recent live stream. She's a little bit irritating, but she's also a little bit adorable. So you kind of forgive the irritating stuff, you know.
Oh, kittens are always irritating.
Oh yeah, just attacking everything. And one of the biggest problems we're finding is that she tries to get into Julia's. Julia has like a cot in the living room so that, you know, she can just be in the living room and maybe watch TV without us worrying about her scrambling around everywhere. And so the cat will get in the cot and sometimes kind of claw at Julia. So it's a little bit
trying to play with her.
Babies and cats don't really go together. That's what I've learned, you know.
Yeah, our friend Jason and Amanda, who adopted those two little black kittens, she was sending me pictures yesterday. Her one girl keeps climbing on the top of their curtains and like just hanging out on top of the curtain rods. And she just got spayed last week, but I guess didn't bother that kitten much.
So just before you came on, Kimmy, Arthur brought up the subject of the latest governing body update video, update number 4, I think it is, featuring Mr. Tony Morris. I don't know whether you've had a chance to watch that.
I don't. Was it just recently? Yes.
Literally in like the last day or so. That they put it.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not missing much. If I were to summarize it, I don't know what you think, Arthur, but if I were to summarize it, it would be the usual back-patting exercise of, you know, only in Jehovah's organization could we have dealt with things so responsibly. What's interesting is, and kind of quite chilling, is that they seem to be relishing the amount of control that they have over publishers, even to the point where they interview someone, I think, in the Brazil branch office. And
the Ecuador branch, yeah.
But the guy in the Brazil office cites the watchtower, the infamous watchtower about, is it the 8 Dukes?
8 Dukes and 7 Princes. And
8 Dukes and 7 Princes, the awful rhetoric where it says you should obey any instructions you receive, even if these don't seem sound from a human standpoint. And he actually quotes that and uses that to say, well, this is exactly what we're dealing with at the moment. The instructions we may be receiving from the faithful slave may not seem sound from a human standpoint, but by following them, we're benefiting ourselves. And he gives some example of where and we know Brazil's been hopelessly behind, but he gives some example where the society were giving instructions, and obviously the restrictions in Brazil were much more flexible, but they went with the instructions from the society, and therefore they were benefited in some way. And that's the example they give to justify this thinking. And as I've said before in previous videos, that sort of rhetoric takes you straight to Jonestown. You know.
Yeah, Steve Hassan and I talk about that a lot. We see that in a lot of groups. You know, when Mark left in 2013, and then I was there for 13 months behind him, we had a circuit overseer's visit who came, and he said the same thing. You may not understand what the governing body is asking of you. It's not your place to basically question it. This blind obedience thing, right? It was in a watchtower. It was from a circuit assembly. And I remember, because I was starting to think and wake up, and that really bothered me. I think it was September of 2014. I left in December. That's when the circuit overseer had come around, and he really drove home that whole idea of, you may not understand, you can't really question it. Trust that they know better. We see that's going on now with the COVID-19 stuff. My aunt is a Jehovah's Witness. She was out for years and she's back, and it's kind of a mess, but she made some comment to a family member that said, regardless of what the local authorities say, she is waiting on the governing body to give, and the Watchtower headquarters to give her direction about when she can come back out or do whatever. That she wouldn't listen to doctors or the governing officials locally, that she's waiting on her governing body to tell her.
Yeah, it's just chilling to see, again, them apparently relishing the control. And it was also interesting that they don't seem to be in any great rush to get witnesses back into kingdom halls.
True.
So they're basically saying, we're going to decide when we go back to the kingdom halls, not necessarily the local authorities, because the local authorities, even though we're obeying Caesar, the local authorities could have their own agendas, such as protecting the economy and that sort of thing, whereas we're more concerned with saving lives. Again, backpatting exercise. But it just yeah.
And actually, Tony Morris says it's not about money.
Well, that's what I was going to come to, is that if the organization were intrigued at the prospect of one day getting rid of Kingdom Halls, and when I say getting rid, I mean selling them and cashing in on them and getting that windfall, what would be interesting would be kind of a dry run. What's going to happen if witnesses don't go to Kingdom Halls for a period? Are we going to see a noticeable drop off in numbers, or are things going to stay roughly the same? If things stay roughly the same, then why do we need Kingdom Halls? So I can't help but wonder whether it's actually in the organization's interests to keep witnesses out of Kingdom Halls. Not that I'm not complaining, by the way, that witnesses aren't allowed to go to Kingdom Halls. I think it's great. By all means, take precautions, but it just does seem a little bit convenient for the organization's kind of long-term aims for them to be just using this to see whether there's a noticeable difference if they were to cash in.
I will say that we've seen them give direction about donating, right? Because you've got people aren't going to the Kingdom Halls, so they're not donating for their mortgages, and I mean, I'm sure they still have to have some electric on, right? Even though they're not in the building and that kind of stuff. And we know that a lot of the recruitment stuff, and when inactive people come back, it's all love bombing. So you do wonder if that's social connection, without that, how would that affect them, right? So I do think this is a perfect time for them to dry run. And we see them using the breakout rooms feature now, right? On these meetings, you get assigned randomly. I think here locally, it's like you're assigned randomly to a breakout room. So after the meeting, you can talk in small groups. That's what they're doing, at least here locally. So
I didn't even know you could do breakout rooms.
Yeah, it's a new feature on Zoom, and they've taken advantage of it, at least locally. I'm sure this is direction Mark could probably fill you in later. And so you're assigned randomly to a breakout room. So you stay on after the meeting and you talk to those 10 people for a bit of time. It's almost like forced socialization. So it's kind of keeping that, because that's one of the draws, right, to this religion, is the social connections that people experience.
It kind of takes the whole agape principle of forced friendship to a whole new level. We've selected who you should socialize with.
And they're using it too for also like letter writing.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, but it'll be. I think it'll be interesting to see, because they've even when I was kind of leaving in 2014, I started noticing they were almost patterning themselves after the Mormons, the Latter-day Saints. I don't know what they're called now, but they did their little cartoon. Mormons already did their cartoon, right? Then they started broadcasting, and that Mormons already were broadcasting centralized, right? From the apostles. So it'd be interesting. They do a lot of meetings virtual as well. So it is interesting to see them continue. They've got this great setup now. They've got all their recommendations. So when, for how to use Zoom for your meetings, and, the attendants have to allow you in and all that good stuff,
Yeah, and yesterday, a new letter came in, a very graphic diagram about what to take care of during your Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm.
How not to have distracting elements in your background, mute and unmute your microphone, and all that kind of stuff.
I'm imagining a new chapter in future updates of the Shepherd book, all about Zoom meetings and Zoom etiquette.
An addendum for sure, right?
Yeah. Dale Reeb, thank you so much for your super chat. That's extremely generous of you. Thank you. Really do appreciate these super chats coming through. Let's just see here. Joe Cocho says it's just not going to work as they hoped for long if we don't just suck it up and stay home. I know it sucks, but this is what we need to do. I think speaking more broadly about the lockdown, only in Jehovah's organization could we obey every law and command from the secular authorities, apart from when it comes to child abuse. Exactly. We were talking about this before, Kimmy, about how, the situation in Australia with the redress and how they're jumping through hoops to avoid paying the money. even though the money's definitely coming in. It's just that they're forwarding it straight to America.
Because during the Royal Commission, when they were asked about that, I knew they weren't going to do it anyway, claiming interfaith and all that good stuff. But they said they would do it themselves, right? They would set money aside themselves. And we know that. I can tell you from my mindset as a survivor, I never would have asked the organization for money. I paid for counseling myself. My abuse led me to having to leave home at an early age, and not, if it wasn't for the kindness of Steve, I wouldn't have had anything. Yeah. But I never would have asked the organization to. But if it was coming from the government, it's a different story, right? If they had donated to the government, then I would have said, okay, that's due to me. So they're very sneaky in how they do that. They just they're claiming they're going to do it themselves. Now you haven't even heard any more talk about that, and they're just it's really sad. These are real people that really need help. And they don't have the funds to do so. And, Watchtower's trying to get away with it. So it'd be interesting to see if they get sanctioned or how that works. Because it's voluntary, right?
I mean, you would hope that the Australian authorities will realize what's going on and
they have to make it mandatory.
Won't be fooled. Yeah. Eric Lawson says, Morris says they place a high value on life. Unless a blood transfusion is needed, then that value isn't quite as high anymore. Agreed entirely. And perhaps now is a good opportunity to plug tomorrow's upload. So tomorrow I will be uploading a video with the title Angels of Death, what doctors should know about Jehovah's Witness HLCs. So that's going to go on the channel tomorrow, and it's basically prompted by, once I'd done it, I was thinking, why have I not done this before? This is just such an obvious video that someone needs to make, so that there's an easy handshake with doctors, and we can just easily say, this is what you need to know, that they're lying to you, they're deceiving you.
And not just doctors, Lloyd, because you have family members, right?
Yeah.
Even some that are next of kin of Jehovah's Witnesses that don't understand all of the nuances. And if their mother, their father, their husband, their child goes into the hospital, right? They need to know that these men are going to show up, and this is the information they're going to pass, and then they may believe them, oh, okay, So I think it's not just for doctors. I think it's huge for, non-Jehovah's Witnesses that have family members that are witnesses to understand what's going on and the pressures involved.
Indeed. So it was prompted by a video that went up on JW.org. So I've done it in the format of a rebuttal, but please do check it out when it goes up tomorrow. And on Monday, we will be doing a Watchtower in Focus live stream, the first one in months, on Rolf Feruli, so that I can get everyone off my back. The amount of people who've been badgering me, saying, when are you going to talk about Rolf Feruli's book? Oh yeah, okay, we will do something. We just want to wait for things to kind of reach some kind of finality, and we found out, or there is significant chat in Norway that he has been disfellowshipped. So we figure now's a good time to ease everyone's Feruli expectations and anticipation.
And I will say this: it's not unusual. Like, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe he still believes the organization is true," but the men are bad. In our personal experience, Mark talks to a lot of PMOs and elders, and even his mother, and there are quite a few that are separating that right now, saying, this is the truth, or the most accurate truth, and the men are corrupt. And some are waiting for reform, or some are hanging around because they have no better option. So it's not unusual to see someone like him. I remember, even for myself, when I first started learning stuff, that it only took me 2 weeks to come out of that. But first off, I learned the 2-witness rule was from the governing body. Okay, well, this can't be the truth then, or they are corrupt. And then I started saying, did I miss another? Is there another true organization out there? And then, of course, I realized that, at least personally, that I no longer believed in a God. But so it's an interesting mindset, and it'll be interesting to revisit this too in a year and see if he still feels the same way, right?
Well, we've got our work cut out, because on the one hand, we don't want to pull too many punches. We want, if he's saying stuff that's nonsense in his book, we want to be able to say, this is nonsense, but at the same time we want to kind of say it with a smile on our face, because we don't want to upset him so much that he would never consider coming on the channel, because I'm always open to a respectful dialogue, even if I completely disagree with someone's opinions.
Right.
So it's going to be an interesting tightrope that we're going to be walking. We've got an interesting panel assembled for that.
Oh, great.
And it'll be interesting to just look at this case study of a POMI, a physically out, mentally in person.
Yeah.
So,
looking forward to it.
Indeed. Katrin Kapler says, hello from Germany, been in Bethel for 14 years. On June 25th, it will be 12 years since I said to the committee, I am no longer a JW. Thank you for your work. Wow. Well, happy 12-year anniversary, Katrin.
Almost. Yeah, that's great.
That's wonderful. The much says JW. People are deliberately choosing names that I can't pronounce. JW love is conditional, and they want your money, your time, your life. So yeah, lots of nice comments coming through. Lou Knight says, I've heard from several still in JW family members how they are following the sound direction from the governing body, which is curiously the same direction from local authorities. This is the irritating. I mean, you even heard at the outset, didn't you, of the lockdown? They were almost claiming Zoom as their own, as though they'd somehow invented it. It was so crazy. Some of the stuff
especially when they log on to jworg.zoom.
Oh, yeah, that's probably what was confusing them. Oh, we've invented this thing called Zoom.
And Roku.
And Roku, yeah. We've invented the internet.
That is mine.
David Johnston says, but Watchtower follows the advice of the health department, so who's really giving the direction? Just cut out the middleman. Indeed. This is one of the infuriating things, actually, covering the whole issue of hospital liaison committees. Why do you need a chapter in a book for elders on medical matters? Go to your doctor. There, chapter written. Go to your doctor. You shouldn't need a chapter.
See someone who's actually studied this stuff, and
unless it's the business, unless the religion makes it their business to involve themselves. And you see this sort of thing as well in the way they talk about disasters. They make it sound as though you couldn't possibly survive an earthquake unless you're attached to a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, what about all the people in that earthquake-stricken country who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses? What about them? How have they survived? It's very, very clever how they do it.
And Lloyd, I think that's one of the reasons they're still in lockdown, because I do honestly think it's going to be a propaganda get when this is over, that they're going to say that they stayed in quarantine longer than the recommendation, and that so those people that died early on, once they did this quarantine lockdown, they saw less deaths. And I think they're going to compare it, and they're going to take credit for saving lives. I really do think it's going to be a propaganda get.
Kimmy, that was the essential message Tony Morris gave in yesterday's video. So he used Proverbs 14:16, which says, if I'm not mistaken, the wise one is cautious and turns away from evil, but the stupid one is reckless and overconfident.
Yep.
So he was literally saying that the secular authorities are overconfident in the matter and easing up restrictions too early, but we, God's true organization, are cautious, are prudent, are discreet in
right. Yet they were so slow in actually following the direction in the beginning. They were continuing to meet. They were continuing to preach. They were letting people go to doors. As long as you stay 6 feet from the doors, well, you're with a partner that's not from your household, right? And people were getting sick. People died, I guess they forgot about that.
Yolanda says, yay, I finally was able to listen to you live. Keep up the amazing work. I look forward to your informative chats. Well, I hope our chat has been informative. To be completely honest, we were a bit threadbare to begin with, weren't we, Arthur?
Yes.
But then Kimmy came sallying forth to the rescue, dangling a very loud cat on our screen.
And I also want to give credit to our wonderful moderators, Heidi and Eric.
They've had their work cut out in this live stream.
I got a message that said, Lloyd's a lone with author, and his song was kind of triggering.
But we have been beset, it seems. So thank you to the moderators for taking no prisoners.
Oh, and I will say, Mark and I, we went, our friends that came down from New York, we actually went, Maryland just opened, right? So I think officially at 5 p.m. yesterday, we've entered phase 2. I don't know, Pennsylvania does green, yellow, red. Every state's doing something different here in America. But that meant restaurants could allow limited dining in. So we actually got to go inside a restaurant last night. They took our temperature. We had to wear a mask to our seat, and they took our phone number, I guess, in case there's somebody that turns out they were sick. They could let us know for treatment.
Did they feed you at any point?
They did. There were no condiments on the table. We couldn't share bread, even though we came together. They couldn't give us bread to share, but they brought out individual packets of, pepper. And if you wanted a sauce, it came in a single-use little plastic container. So they're taking good precautions. The restaurant was very empty, and it's one that's only packed. So it was kind of weird to see. But it's nice to see some things opening back up. But at the same vein, I don't know. Maryland, our number of hospitalizations are steadily down. They're very, very low. At the lowest point they've been. That's your indicator to look at. Not the number.
Enjoy it while you can. Enjoy it while you can, Kimmy, because
other states are now spiking up. If Croatia is spiking up, right? You guys opened back up before we did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think
when did you guys fully open? Croatia, kind of. You guys opened back up.
Well, we basically
May.
Yeah, so sort of middle of May, we kind of opened back up.
Right, you're a month ahead of us, right?
Yeah, and so now a month down the line, we're seeing a second spike. So
yeah, and we have in America, Arizona, North Carolina. It was like 4 states now that are really bad. Arizona's real bad, and the indicator is the number of hospitalizations, and they're going up in those states, which is scary.
Miss Tulip Lady says, my dad has also boomeranged, was a witness in his youth, was inactive for 20 years. Now in his 60s, he is back in. I think it's a mortality thing. It's not just a mortality thing. This is why I keep saying research. It's not enough to simply think, oh, it's nonsense, I'm going to get out of it. You need to give your mind the tools it needs to reason these things through. Otherwise, all it takes is for the next catastrophe to come along, and all of a sudden you're panicking and you feel as though your life is in danger.
And if you do, like she said, and when you get older, if you've never you've left that, but what do you really believe now, right? What have you authentically learned? Like, so I understand my own beliefs now about what happens when I die, right? So if you've never kind of come to terms with that, you may always think that, oh gosh, if I die, I need to come back so I can have a chance at everlasting life. And also I think elderly people get lonely. So I think it's a reminder to check in on, if you have elderly family that's out. But the funny thing is, my one really close friend, he left the religion like the group is not, I don't really consider it a religion. He left like 5 or 6 years before I did. So I got out and started talking to my friend Lewis. And he was an atheist, became a Jehovah's Witness after high school because he wasn't happy. But one of my mutual friends seemed happy to him. So he said he wanted to be happy like him. So he started studying. Within 6 months, Lewis became a Jehovah's Witness, shaved his beard, gave up atheism. He was on the assembly part. They're like, and he's being baptized today, and everyone's clapping. So then he wakes up, he leaves, but he became an atheist again, but he still had this fear of Armageddon. It was this very weird thing, like a catastrophe would happen, and he'd get this pain in his gut, like, is he wrong? So it took me kind of coming out and helping him research and and all this kind of stuff. And then it took him a good year, and then he thanked me because he said now he doesn't have that anymore, right? And it's just such a weird juxtaposition that he still believed, he was still an atheist, but still once in a while had this fear that, was he wrong? Was there a God, and was there going to be this awful Armageddon? And, so it just is a nod to, like you said, research.
Yeah, sometimes people just feel that what if feeling regarding God.
Yeah, I get messages when the coronavirus hit. I got messages from a few homies that, are dealing with stuff. They were scared. And I said, you know what? You're normal. It's normal to have these feelings. You just have to use your brain and say, hey, I don't want to follow the emotions of this. Let me think the logic through. So the Spanish flu was worse than the coronavirus. So things are getting better, not worse, right? You have to think it through. And then she's like, okay, thank you so much. You know, she was okay. She didn't run back.
Well, I made a video. I think it was called "Are We Living in the Last Days?" because during at the height of the pandemic, here in Zagreb, we had an earthquake, and
that's right.
You know, I'm probably one of. I don't think it's bragging to say I'm probably one of the most well-known ex-Jehovah's Witness apostates. And for a few split seconds, long enough for me to detect it as a thought in my brain, you're thinking, hang on a minute, pandemic, my house is shaking, I might die, maybe, just even if it's just for like a split second. So if it's producing a split second of a thought in me, goodness knows what it's doing in someone that's just not done any research whatsoever.
And I shared your video with her, and it was very helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and that's true, because it's normal. It's an emotional response, especially when we were raised in that, and I was drilled in us. Well, my friend Lewis wasn't even raised in it, right? He was there for like 10 years. But so I just want to say for all the viewers, you know, you're not stupid. You know, I'm glad you said that, Lloyd. You know, it's normal, but that's an emotion. You have to recognize that it's an emotional reaction, think it through with logic, and don't go running back.
Jason Franklin has sent in a question which leads me to assume that there might be Jehovah's Witnesses watching today's Last Days live stream, which is excellent news, because Jason says, hi all, a question I want to ask. If a person renounced JW religion, then what religion he should accept? So I've kind of dealt with this sort of question a few times on my channel. Simply put, it's not my place to tell you, Jason. If your religion isn't true, if your religion is corrupt and abusive and manipulative, my advice would be get out of it. It's not then my job to find you a surrogate set of beliefs to go to. In my view, you don't necessarily need any beliefs, but that's a journey for you to go on. And why would I want to make those decisions for you? It simply isn't my place. So
I will say, when it's important to recognize why you're leaving and look at other groups and see, do they have the same model? Like, don't leave and become a Mormon or follow one of these conspiracy groups like QAnon, right? Because that we've seen that, right? You leave one of these high controlling religions or groups or cults and you go into another. So if you can find a way to have faith and spirituality that doesn't hurt people and doesn't hurt yourself, we're not going to judge you for it, even if that's not our journey. It's personal.
And I will say this, for all of the heat I get for being an atheist, here's the way you need to look at it. If I were, let's say I was a born again Christian, in almost every video, I'd be on your case, on the case of my viewers, saying you need to embrace my beliefs. It's because I'm an atheist, it's because I'm secular, that I don't lose a wink of sleep. If Arthur becomes a Buddhist, I don't care. You know, it's just whatever you want to do. If I were a born again Christian, I might view things differently. Right. I might come round to Arthur's apartment. I might drive to Romania.
Or you would do like this. Come to Jesus. Jesus Christ.
Oh gosh, you started him, Lloyd. He was doing so good.
Gosh. We
have other friends, and they're on spiritual journeys, right? And that's the difference. Is even I have family members that can go to like a Catholic church, identify as Catholic, but pick and choose what they want. You know, oh well, I don't. You know, I still support the LGBT community, even if like my pastor doesn't, or I don't get any of that, right? But some people can just pick and choose, or they take a little from this, a little from that, you know, and they make up what their belief system is. When you're a Jehovah's Witness, you can't do that. You cannot think for yourself. And that's the difference.
But what's most important, and what Lloyd said, Revelation 18:4.
Mute him.
Get out of her, my people.
Oh,
get out of false religion.
Actually, I'm muted.
You muted the wrong person.
I'm losing control at this point, and I'm going to blame it on my eyes. Annika P says, Lloyd, look after your eye. Keep up with the eye drop regime. I don't think Deanna needs telling, to be honest. She is on the case. I'm surprised she's not bombarded me with fluids actually during the course of this recording. But that brings to an end our show for today. Again, massive thanks to Kimmy for sallying forth to the rescue, because we were flagging a little bit, even though we had a stellar performance from Arthur in Sing Along with Arthur, which is still ringing in my ears. It must.
Don't worry, I'll watch it on the replay.
Yeah.
I'll give you my comments.
Yeah,
at least a few seconds of it.
Okay.
It was singing, it was prayer, and it was a short introductory story.
Oh, it really was triggering that. Okay, my friend was right.
Yeah, it was.
One might call it food at the proper time. If you want to send in a voicemail for future Last Days live stream episodes, here is the address to use. Alternatively, maybe you're feeling very ambitious and very brave, and you might want to send in a video for us to examine. Some people have done that in the past, but not for a while. If you do want to do it, upload a short video, maybe a couple of minutes, to YouTube, mark it as unlisted, and send a link to this email address, and we will play it on the channel, as long as there's no nudity. Within reason. I'm not going to be held to this.
And I just think all I can think about is your shark lady, right, with her thong on, swimming in the water.
Yes, that's true. We haven't had.
I'm surprised it doesn't get flagged.
We haven't had Sherry's Comfort Corner, but the way I see it is that's such a random video that someone's created. I'm probably the only person that's actually paid them for that. So someone somewhere has been paid for something that no one else is buying. So I feel good about it. So again, it's a busy weekend because there's obviously, in addition to today's live stream, tomorrow there will be the Angels of Death video about HLCs, and then on Monday we're going to have Watchtower in Focus live, dealing with Rolf Feruli, so that people can stop badgering me about doing that particular video. My
beloved religion and the governing body.
My books haven't arrived yet, Arthur. Are they definitely in the post?
Yes.
Okay. Probably shouldn't have said that on the live stream. But
it's okay.
Anyway, thank you to all 321 now watching, and those of you who have been watching. I promise to have my live streaming game more in order in future episodes. I'm sorry it was so amateurish. And
I'll have a limerick next Saturday. I've been slacking on that. So
please do. We look forward to your limericks, Kimmy. But that's all we have for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to stay safe, stay positive, and we will see you on the next show. Take care.
Bye-bye.